The Seattle Seahawks victory over the New Orleans Saints was great. But I'm going to tell you in today's video why that victory is 100 times better for the Seattle Seahawks. And you might be saying to yourself, Will, how could it possibly be? You absolutely laid the smackdown on the New Orleans Saints 44-13. But trust me, I've got multiple reasons on how this victory can get even better. But if you want to find out how that victory gets even better, you have to subscribe to the channel. I'll wait. Now, I've already thanked you plenty of times for subscribing to this channel, so I want to extend that one last time. Thank you for subscribing and diving into this video with us. But that Seattle Seahawks victory is just the tip of the iceberg about how great this team can be and how important this victory was for the team. Now, my first reason that I want to dive into is kind of a negative. And I've already had people diving at me in the comments for the instant reaction video saying, Will, Kenneth Walker had a much better game than you give him credit for. It wasn't a mid-run game. They just had a lot of runs down by the goal line. And here is where I would disagree. I believe that Kenneth Walker had a fine game. 2 touchdowns, 2 trips into the end zone. That's perfectly great. Love that for him. But I felt like there was an opportunity here for Kenneth Walker and George Holani to really up their roles from what it had been. And I didn't feel like either one of them did that. Specifically looking at Kenneth Walker. Great, man. You got into the end zone a couple times. That's fantastic. But your yards per carry average, it just wasn't where it needed to be, especially after how well you performed against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I feel like right now Kenneth Walker is relying too much on the big play. And when I'm talking about the big play, I'm talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers game where he has that 20-yard touchdown run. He had a couple other big 15-yard runs in that game. He's kind of dancing around like we all know he likes to do until he finds the right hole, and then bam, and he can be gone. And I know a couple calls went the Seahawks' way, right? You had some holding calls that brought some of his big long runs back. But in my eyes, there needs to be times where, hey, you wait for the big play, and sometimes you just take what the defense gives you. That's where Zach Charbonnet comes in. Obviously, he wasn't able to go. He wasn't healthy in this matchup. He's dealing with a foot thing. As someone who's dealt with a couple of foot things, I get it. Take some time. Plus, I'd rather have Zach Charbonnet ready to go for Thursday night against the Arizona Cardinals. This is where he steps up because he's the perfect complement to Kenneth Walker because he will stick his foot in the ground and go get those tough yards. We saw it against the San Francisco 49ers. When there wasn't yards to get on that big play capability, that's where Zach Charbonnet really shined. Now, I don't want to throw this completely on Holani, Charbonnet for being hurt, and Kenneth Walker, because frankly, that's not fair. This offensive line, they didn't do a good enough job. I don't feel like the Saints were overly stacking the box, and I understand that they have a good defensive unit. Granderson and Cam Jordan, fantastic. Davis over there at that linebacker spot, like they're pretty freaking good. But 2.6 yards a carry is not good enough. You need to be at that 3 yardage mark. I used to have an offensive line coach in high school. Coach Steele would come up to me and say, Ortner, if we get 3 yards a carry every single play, we'll never have to punt. And in my eyes, because I'm great at math, I said, well, coach, that's only 9 yards. And he goes, well, I ain't punting on 4th if I'm within 1 yard. So I kind of understand that as well. Right now, that offensive line has to look at themselves and say, hey, we are half of the problem. And that running back room has to say, hey, we're half of the problem. 2 touchdowns is great, but I think there's more meat left on the bone. And that's why I think that this group can get better because they will get better as that chemistry builds with the offensive line and as that running back room kind of develops into more of that 2-headed monster, and we're able to use our full stable of backs. Now, the other reason why I think that this win is 100 times better than what we're seeing is we finally saw what Sam Darnold truly is, and he's freaking elite. Just look at this stat line that he had. I mean, I'm not a math major. I don't know what 14 divided by 18 is, but I'll tell you what, right now, that's a pretty darn good stat line. I don't know if that's 80%, 90%, but it's pretty darn close. Then you're throwing in 2 touchdowns, and the most important part from Sam Darnold, he didn't turn the ball over in this game. That was his major bugaboo. It cost you a game against the 49ers. Frankly, it almost cost you a game against the Pittsburgh Steelers until, well, that can of whoop-you-know-what came into play. He didn't turn the ball over, and that was massive. That's not even getting into the fact of where Sam Darnold ranks right now in the NFL. Remember, that 49ers game was a struggle. He only threw for 150 passing yards in that game. At one point, he had 80 passing yards in the second half. Frankly, if I remember correctly, that was in the fourth quarter. He's still 12th in the NFL right now in passing yards. When it comes to yards per pass, he's averaging 9 yards per pass, all while completing close to 70% of his balls. That is why you signed Sam Darnold. The issue with Geno Smith was there were too many times where he took too many risks. He thought his arm was strong enough to fit the ball into spots that, frankly, it wasn't strong enough to fit into. Sam Darnold does a great job of just taking what the defense gives him, and you really saw an added element into Darnold in this game, and that was his ability to throw on the run. That touchdown to Jackson Smith-Njigba, he's throwing across his body just like that, still hits his wide receiver perfectly in target. That touchdown ball to Tory Horton, oh my goodness, it was beautiful. That's why you signed Sam Darnold. That's why you moved on from Geno Smith. I love that Seattle has an elite quarterback. Now, I have multiple more reasons that we need to get into, but before I do that, I need to make sure I talk about today's sponsor, because this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Prize Picks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on any 2 to 6 player stat projections, and if your picks are right, you could cash in. Prize Picks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. I was playing Prize Picks this weekend. Trust me, should have used the flex play option. Just saying. Made a 2-pick power play for the Thursday night game against the Arizona Cardinals. Kyler Murray going up against this vaunted Seahawks defense, less than 216.5 passing yards. Sam Darnold going against the Cardinals defense, more than 214.5 passing yards. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. All right, we're diving back into the reasons why this win gets 100 times more important, more impressive, 100 times more anything that is good for your Seattle Seahawks, and that was the emergence of Tory Horton. Hello! A lot of people were making Horton Here's a Who jokes, including my wonderful grandmother. Shouts out to Nana, love you. But I'll tell you right now, this kid is a stud. There were a lot of people, experts, geniuses that I might say, that found Horton as the steal of the draft. And I don't want to say that I didn't believe them, but I was at least a little bit skeptical. I had that little eyebrow raise like The Rock. Are we sure? Do we completely agree with what's going on? And I think at this point, Tory Horton showed us at that wide receiver position, the kid is an end zone magnet. He gets into the end zone again. It was absolutely beautiful how he waited a moment, threw his hands up late, a perfect ball thrown by Sam Darnold in a spot where only he could catch it. The defender had no shot on it, made sure he gets both his feet inbounds, protects the ball, falls out. Absolutely perfect. No notes. Felt like Tory Horton is really emerging as that third wide receiver. And you cut MVS for Tory Horton. He had to go out and perform as that deep play threat. He's clearly become that. We're not even diving into what he did on special teams, because he set your franchise record for the longest punt return in franchise history on Sunday. 95-yard punt return for a touchdown. Our Saints now host Trace Gerard did come up to me and said, hey, I think there might have been a couple blocking the backs. Well, here's the deal. I speed in my car all the time. But if I don't get pulled over for speeding, then I didn't speed. I don't know what to tell you here. Maybe there were blocking the backs. I didn't see a flag on that play. Did you? Tory Horton has been absolutely fantastic, and he's the perfect icing on the cake when it comes to this wide receiver room. You knew that Jackson Smith-Njigba was going to be, honestly, a top 10 wide receiver. He's playing even better than that. Right now, he's looking like he's closer to being a top 2 receiver in the league, and frankly, he ain't 2. Cooper Kupp, look, he's not going to be Cooper Kupp of 2019. He's still a pretty darn good pro, but you needed that third weapon, that third person where if one of those guys was having a bad game, they can step up, or you can have that deep play threat, that person who can take the top off the defense. You got rid of DK Metcalf. You let him walk. You traded him away. You needed to find someone to fill that role that he had. Tory Horton has clearly stepped up into that. The kid has been absolutely freaking awesome. Now, my fourth reason of why your victory got 100 times better is this defensive line, because they have not fallen off in the slightest. They continue to live in opponents' backfields. And most importantly, you're seeing the emergence of the man who's on the screen right now. Byron Murphy II got another sack on the game. He is 3 games into this 2025 season. He already has a career high in sacks. He's at 2.5. He's one of the top interior pressure guys. He's one of the top QB hurry guys. He's one of the top QB knockdown guys in the NFL. You saw defenses in LA jump because of Aaron Donald getting pressure up the middle. You saw defenses jump in Kansas City because of Chris Jones getting pressure up the middle. You have that in Byron Murphy. He's been absolutely nails, and he's finally living up to that player that you drafted in that first round 2 years ago. Now, I need to make sure that I mention his counterparts, because it seems like whenever there's a big play, a big run stop, it's Leonard Williams. Big Cat has been amazing since he joined this Mike Macdonald defense, and that's what Mike Macdonald does. He makes interior defensive linemen better, and he's been flying around. He had a career year last year. He's picking right back up where he left off. I've been very impressed with Leonard Williams. Mike Morris had a gigantic game in this one, obviously getting more playing time than he has in the past, and frankly, I believe he was top eight in this game when it came to tackles. Huge. I haven't even gotten to Jarran Reed yet. Jarran Reed is a consummate pros pro. He's been fantastic this season as well. And they make your entire defense go. They've been the best unit, but they have to be the best unit. Wars are won in the trenches. I think General Patton said that, and I'm claiming that for football as well. And you have the best defensive line unit in the entire NFL. I didn't even get to mention any of the edges right now. I haven't mentioned DeMarcus Lawrence. I haven't mentioned Boye Mafe, Uchenna Nwosu. And they've been great. But this interior defensive line unit is special. Your team is going to go as far as they take you. You need to make sure, fingers crossed, everyone stays healthy. That's how well they've been playing. My last reason for why this win gets even better, as well as you played, as good as you looked. I just went off about how great that interior defensive line unit looked. That defense isn't even close to being 100% healthy, and they haven't been 100% healthy this entire year. You're only going to get better because that secondary, frankly, they've been fighting off injuries every single week. Every week there's a new person or two that get added to that list. Offensively, you've been doing all right for the most part when it comes to injuries, but even you haven't gotten away from that bug. I already talked about how Zach Charbonnet has a foot issue that he's dealing with. Hopefully that's just a precautionary thing. Hey, we don't need you for the Saints. You'll be back for the Arizona Cardinals game on Thursday. That's a more important game anyways. Hopefully that's the same thing with Julian Love, but Julian Love was your big-time performer against the 49ers. He was flying around, making tackles in the backfield. He had a sack in that game. Now, he didn't force a turnover, but I don't need to tell you how important Julian Love is to this team. Devon Witherspoon, there is a argument, and one that I will listen to because smart people make it, that Devon Witherspoon is your best defensive player, and you haven't had him since the 49ers game. So he's only going to improve and add more depth into that secondary. Nick Emmanwori today on Twitter did a ... when it said the Seahawks have reinforcements coming soon. There's a picture of him and Devon Witherspoon. I'm not going to recklessly speculate. Maybe that means he's coming back pretty quickly. I'll tell you right now, Nick Emmanwori was that starting nickel. You got 5 plays out of him. He was fantastic in those 5 plays. I can only imagine what he's going to be when he comes back. And Darian Kendrick has been playing pretty well in that position so far. This defense is nasty. This team is nasty. And it's only going to get better because you're going to have players that get used to playing with each other. And more importantly, on the defensive side, you're going to get your true A1 grade A stars back. That doesn't mean that the guys who've been filling in for them have been playing bad. But right now, you're at 80%, and you just took the Saints out behind the woodshed, and, well, that's where I'm going to stop with that analogy. This win was impressive, and you should be writing home about it. You should be bragging to your fans about how well this team looked. If you got a friend who's a Cardinals fan, who's a Rams fan, who's a fan of any team in the NFL that isn't the Seahawks, you should be telling them to jump on the bandwagon, because that bandwagon is going to get pretty darn full, especially once the Seahawks live up to their full potential. You want to talk any ball with me, you can head over, follow me on Twitter or on Instagram at Will Ortner. I'm constantly talking about your Seattle Seahawks, as well as tweeting out some nice food pics. A lot of barbecue this weekend. So if you're a foodie, that's another good reason to follow me. Or if you want to talk Seahawks, you can follow me there or DM me. I'll make sure to answer as many as I possibly can. Until next time, I'll see you later.